First of all, thank you for sharing stories in particular. Holy stories are an important part of. The learning should be for the elevation of the soul of Anna Yulia Bas Yittele. And also Sarah Bas Menachem Mendel Isar. I received in a class with my teacher in the Likkutei Moharan. It isn't written explicitly in this lesson, but it was unpacked by the teacher of the class. That stories, holy stories, help us move past blockages in our personal lives. And somebody in the class did something really nice, that the word for story, sipur, it starts with the samech, which is like a closed, there's no escape from the letter samech, it's just a circle. And then the next letter is pei, and one way that to write pei, it's sort of like a swirly, like that, so you've started to open up the circle a little bit. And then the last letter of the word sipur is a resh, which is now it's just a curve. The letter has been completely open. So it's literally in the physical word itself, sipur, that stories move us past blockages. So, continuing in the Likkutei Moharan, we've discussed the subject of Yaakov and his business dealings with Esav, and that Yaakov did the impossible by acquiring the first son's rights from his brother Esav, despite, not being the first son. You can't really change that. You can't go back in time, but Yaakov Avinu saw the intelligence in the situation, and he was able to see a solution because of that. Now, the Likkutei Moharan continues to say that Yaakov was able to pass this ability to see the intelligence and connect with it in all things onto his son Yosef, which is great, but Yaakov had more sons than just Yosef. He had 12 children in total. So why did uniquely Yosef get this ability? We see that in rabbinic writings, it's not even in rabbinic writings, it's an explicit verse of the Torah, Eile Toildes Yaakov Yosef, that Yaakov and Yosef are equated, that Yosef had something that was so much like his father Yaakov that they're almost considered to be one person. It says in the Midrash that when Yosef was young, Yaakov taught to Yosef everything he had learned in the academy of Shem and Aver, where he basically didn't sleep for 14 years and just learned constantly. And then as he got older, and I guess it says in this Midrash, it's not me saying this, that his memory faded, then Yosef taught back to him everything that he knew. So they were of one intellect. So in that case, don't we already know the lesson that's taught by Yaakov about looking upon the intelligence in all things? Why does Rabbeinu Zal teach us about Yosef now? So they have a similarity, this is clear, but there must also be a difference. And we can look at the situations in their lives and what they had to overcome. We can see a very clear difference. That Yaakov, so first of all, I should say what's similar, because that's what Rabbeinu Zal says, is that they both had issues with their siblings. Yaakov has basically an evil brother. It's that has threatened Yaakov's life on multiple counts and pursued his life and his property. And Yosef also, that he was sold to kind of wandering desert salesmen. We don't know if they were good people or not, but his brothers just sort of sold him to the first buyer, not even at a very expensive price either. So. And his brothers had an issue with him too. They didn't like his behavior. They felt that he was pompous, something like that. So both of them had issues with their siblings, but there's a fundamental difference between Yaakov's sibling, who was genuinely evil. Esav would go into the field. He would just kind of go out into the community and do all sorts of bad things to people. Indefensible things. It isn't like these people started a fight with him or something, or even that these people had great riches and they were holding them up and saying, "Look how rich I am," and sort of asking for it. There's no explanation at all for how Esav conducted himself. And so Yaakov had to do what he did in order to save the world. The blessings of the son of Avraham Avinu, the person who brought the knowledge of God to the world, basically. I mean, a few select individuals knew it, but not really everybody until Avraham Avinu came along. So that guy's son, a blessing from that guy's son, is a powerful blessing. And so if whoever gets it is going to have influence over the whole world. So it's a good thing that the good brother got it, even if it required a little bit of trickery. Now, the question came up in this very class, well, wasn't it a little bit tricky? Wasn't it maybe, I don't want to say dishonest, but wasn't it sort of like taking advantage of Esav's ignorance? I think Genevas Adas was the term that was used. Well, but Esav was also just evil, so you got to do what you got to do. That's not the case by Yosef. It says also in the Midrash that all of the sons of Yaakov Avinu were tzaddikim. They all, everything that they did had very, very good reasons for it. Even if we don't understand the reasons, even if it looks bad to us, the difference between the other brothers of Yosef and Esav is that there is for sure a good explanation within the actions of the brothers of Yosef. And that is not so by Esav. There's an idea, there's a very helpful piece of advice for our mental well-being that's taught in Torah Parasha, which is that some questions are good to think about and other questions are not good to think about. Now, we're intellectual, curious people, so why shouldn't I contemplate every question? And so Rabbi Nachman says that, well, not every question has an answer. I'll say a little bit of a Kabbalistic concept. That the Kabbalistic explanation of the creation of the world is that first there was infinite, well, relatively speaking first, I should say, before there was a world as we know it, there was just infinity, there was just endless light, and it doesn't, if you shined a very bright light in infinity, it doesn't matter. Infinity minus 1 is infinity, infinity minus 1 billion is infinity. There's no difference between 1 and 1 billion in light of infinity. So how could you create a world in an environment like that? So then Hashem created an empty space in order to, he withdrew some of the light, or perhaps covered the light up with emptiness. There's different ways of explaining how he made this empty space, but there's a thing called the empty space. And in that empty space, a world could be created, right? If you go into a dark room with a candle, it makes a big light, even if it's a small candle. So. Now, all questions come from one of two places. First of all, there's no questions about the infinite, the light of the infinite, because we live in a finite world. The light of the infinite is so unrelatable to us with our exposure to finitude that there's no question we could think to ask about that. In order to have a question, you have to understand a little something. Maybe we could say, wah, maybe. But that still implies that there's an us to say, wah. So, no questions exist about the light of the Ein Sof, of the infinite light. It is infinite. So there's two levels at which questions arise from. There's the empty space, and there's also the worlds that were made in the empty space. The questions that originate from the world have answers, because the world is a complete system. It says, in the place that you find Hashem's humbleness, you find His greatness. And what does the Midrash say? It's His humbleness, that He hides Himself completely and makes it appear that the world runs according to natural laws. You could explain just about any phenomena in the world, anyway, in a naturalistic way. And what are you seeing when you do that? You're seeing Hashem's great humility, that He made it that way, so that He made it that way as a show of humility, and also it gives you have to pursue Hashem. It has to be a choice to pursue Hashem. If Hashem was revealed in any capacity in the world, in the phenomenal world, then you wouldn't have any choice. You would just pursue Hashem. And it wouldn't be so special if you didn't have a choice in the matter. So Hashem hides Himself so that we have a choice. So, meaning to say that within the world, every question we have has an answer. And questions that originate from the world, these are good questions. An example of such questions would be, how can we explain the actions of the brothers of Yosef? These questions have answers because the brothers of Yosef are good people and they have very complex reasons for the things that they do, and it is very worth our while to understand these reasons. There is another type of question that comes from the void. And Rabbi Nachman says these questions have no answers. Even if you provide an answer, it won't satisfy you. You'll want to keep looking. It's a little bit like a craving for something. If someone has a craving for money, they can't get enough money. It's not even that they want to buy stuff. It's just they want more money, and they'll never be happy if they're getting the money because of a craving. They could be getting money because they want to use it for good purposes, and that's something different. But someone who's coming at it just from a standpoint of a craving alone, they'll never be satisfied. And it's like because cravings also originate from this empty space. But the questions that originate from this empty space, they do not have an answer, even if you can answer them. And they should not be asked in the mind. If they occur in someone's mind, they should be pushed away and think about something better. Because they only serve to drive a person mad. And as we already learned, we didn't learn this yet, but it does say in this teaching, Likkutei Moharan, that the Yetzer Hara only wants one thing, and that's to drive a guy crazy. We are teaching a Torah of sanity here. And as such, we do not pursue questions that originate from the void. An example of one such question would be, what is the defense for the actions of Esav in the field when he went out and, murder was among the things that he did, as well as other bad things that he would do to innocent bystanders. But there was no reason to target those particular people. They didn't start a fight with him or something. So, most of us don't know a lot of evil people. I think most of us, the people around us, are good people. We don't always agree with them. We don't always understand them, but they are good. And so the reality of Yosef is a much more relatable reality for us. We live in the world. We don't live in the void that used to be in infinity. And no, that's not our experience of life, really. The experience of life that most of us deal with is a worldly experience where everything has a reason. Everything has a revealed intelligence that is put inside of it. And I'm going to emphasize why I'm saying revealed in a moment. So meaning that all of our friends, everything they do has a good reason. So it is very worth our time to think about, why did my friend say that to me? The people in my community, the people that I interact with on a daily basis. Other actions done by people, if someone does something that my reaction to that is, that's just evil, it's probably not a great idea to think about the reasons why they did it. That might drive us mad. And so that's why Rabbeinu Zal does not stop by teaching us about Yaakov Avinu and how Yaakov Avinu applies his ability to look into the intelligence in all things. Because what Yaakov Avinu had to do to overcome Esav is something that requires a lot of working up to. Relatively speaking, it's like staring straight into the sun. And Rabbeinu Zal teaches us before, we have to be like the moon first. We have to work on opening ourselves and things like that before we can tackle the big hard tasks, like taking on a guy like Esav. So we have to learn about Yosef to make it more relatable to us. Okay, so now I'll go forward in the text a little bit. So, therefore, it is written about Yosef. This is the blessing that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to Yosef toward the end of the Chumash. Actually, it's in the last parsha, I believe. B'chor shoyroi hadar loi. The rights of the first, this word shoyroi seems like it's talking about his bull, like a cow. That's sort of what the word means, but we'll have to understand what the poeticism is about here. Is saying he's going to be a good farmer or something? No, we have to understand. Hadar loi, it will beautify him. Okay. So Rabbeinu Zal says what Bechor is. We've discussed the concept of Bechorus before, that the Bechorus is the first son rights that Yaakov got from Esav, and we remember a series of hints that Bechor is the first son. So there's this concept of firstness. Yaakov had to be more firstish. He had to so that means what's the first thing? Well, Reish is Chachma. So the first thing, before we get to the good and the bad of things, in reality, when Hashem started to make the worlds, a very simple explanation would be to say that the first thing he did is make there be a what, that there is something at all. And from our experience, so that's called Chachma, that's called wisdom, I guess, from Hashem's side, is that you had to make a whatness before you could do anything with it. From our standpoint, the whatness is experienced as the ability to just kind of take in information, just kind of appreciate and notice stuff without judging it. That actually comes before like Chesed and Gevurah, good, things I like and things I don't like and all that. So someone who grabs the sort of firstness has a little bit of an advantage. And so that's where Yaakov got the Bechor. So again, this is a review in this word Bechor. So, but the pasuk says Bechor Shoiroi. Why does it seem like it's talking about his livestock? V'zehu Shoiroi, and Rebbeinu Zal says something very different about it. L'shoin histaklus, that it's a language of looking. Because we need to look upon the intelligence that is in all things. But now we have a new understanding of this concept here. Remember that the point of looking, as we discussed before, the point of looking at the intelligence in all things is not to trip out about it. It's not that we're going to stand there and just take in information until the end of time. We've got stuff to do. Good stuff to do. That is worthy of our energies and worthy of our diverting our attention away from the intelligence a little bit. We get the intelligence, we get our inspiration, we get our frame of reference, how to move well in this room, how to work with the situation, and then we go and we work with the situation and we improve the situation. We started the teaching by saying that the likes and dislikes of the world are in a fallen state. People like things that, I don't know if that really is worthy of our attention so much, and people dislike them, people worry about things that maybe there's some more legitimate immediate concerns that we might have in our day-to-day lives and in the areas where we can actually make a tangible impact. And so it's our job to elevate these things that we like, that we should come to like and be worried about more worthy things, and so too by those around us, and so the whole world. And so there's a point to looking upon the intelligence of all things. Now, that being said, some things are more worthy than other things of really looking into. The areas where it is within our powers to influence this situation, it isn't just going to make me neurotic to look intensely upon this, but it is actually going to increase my power to help. These are more worthy situations, and essentially the difference is between looking upon the actions of our siblings, those who are close to us, and how we can help improve our relationships with the people around us, and the things that we do, the pu'ulas, how do you say that in English? The events or something, I don't know, that we put, the good deeds that we do, organize the people around us, that are our peers, as opposed to like really doing a lot of job contemplating our enemies. We don't necessarily want our enemies like in our living room, right? We'd rather them be a little bit far away, so if they can't physically hurt me, if they're further away from me, that would be better. So kal v'chomer, I mean, how much more so? I don't want them in my head. That's closer to me even than my room. So whoever our enemies are, anybody that I think of that's where I'm holding right now as a person, is that I think of them as an enemy. This could even be someone that's in my neighborhood. I mean, chas v'shalom, hopefully I should be more mature than that, but some people have a very difficult time with feelings of animosity, and if that's a person's unique challenge, then this lesson kind of sort of goes especially to them. I'm not assuming there's anybody in the room like that, but I don't know everybody's heart. So, and everybody has their unique challenges. I'm only saying that some people's unique challenge is animosity. And anybody that I regard as an enemy, this is not a person that I probably should be thinking a lot about right away until I'm really on a level to handle this in a civil way. What did Yaakov actually do, by the way, to defeat Esav? He made like a deal with him. He gave him something to eat. You know what he did? He gave him something to eat. I think probably everybody in the room has heard. There was an amazing story about there was, I think it was a little old woman in my head. That's how the story goes. Who was like home alone, and some invaders came into her home with harmful intentions. And the first thing she did is she offered them something to eat. This woman understands the story of Yaakov Avinu. And you know what? And they sat down and they had something to eat. And then eventually the salvation came, and this woman was okay, as far as I understand the story. So what did Yaakov actually do? He gave Esav something to eat. In a way, he didn't poison him or something. He gave him perfectly. He was planning to eat it himself. And then Esav walked into him. He said, I'll give it to you instead. So if that's not where we're holding with someone, that we're ready to give them the food off our plate, then maybe we're not in a place that we should be trying to really think about how I deal with this person. So I don't even say in Breslov, I can say from the first teaching, the first verse, that it's like the third word or something. And okay, maybe it's not the third word, but it's close. The fourth word in the Likkutei Moharan is hoylechim. Ashrei tamei midarech ha-hoylechim b'teiras Hashem. Those who walk in the ways of Hashem, and not those who do backflips in the ways of Hashem. We have to work our way up to things. Why do we have to do that? Especially if I'm a guy who can do backflips, because then it'll be good. I heard a story recently about some information was going around about people saying, well, if you want to have children, you want to have more children, and if you feel like maybe you're having a hard time having more children, here's a way to do it that is not necessarily according to the Torah law as understood by the rabbis and agreed upon by the rabbis. And they made a scientific case for it. I'm not a scientist. I imagine their science is probably right. They probably could actually increase. But why do we do all these laws? Why do we have to do everything in this plotty way where I have to be careful of every little detail? Because we want to be holy. Because we want to do it in a specific way that it's going to come out good with it. Like, I could make a car that goes fast, but it has really bad exhaust pipe, and just this big pill of smoke comes out every time, and everybody around me chokes. But the car goes fast. Or, okay, I can make a car that goes a reasonable speed, and maybe we'll eventually get to one that goes fast, and it doesn't make pollution in the atmosphere. And it still gets you where you're going. It still functions. It's not as flashy exactly, but it's all good. And that's what we want, is a world that's all good. I think we've had a lot of all good things today, so we're reaching time a little bit already with this. But I'll just conclude. Until the next teacher comes. Right. So I'll state this idea here that we should start in the domain that is all good, so that we can deal with things in a way that is all good. Of course, the metaphor of going to the gym is a very popular metaphor. I shouldn't just go in and try to pull a 315-pound deadlift, even if I can do it, because if it hurts me, it won't make me stronger. There was an exercise coach who he worked with intense military guys and stuff, and then he kind of came into the world of more regular people's fitness, and he noticed that a lot of people go to the gym and they just beat themselves up, and they work so hard, and they come out and they're just sweaty and miserable, and they feel they're weak for 3 days afterward and things like that. And he's like, look, the gym's supposed to make you strong. If you do just the right exercises in the right sequence that will work for your body, and you consult someone wise, there's this concept in Breslov of the tzaddik emes, that there is this ultimate wise person, and I should always be looking for this person. And in any room, anywhere I need help, I should, even if I can't I don't ever say that I found the tzaddik emes, but I can say that I'm looking for the smartest guy in the room to help me. I'm the wisest person in the room to help me. I should always have a little bit of a radar for that. Admit, what are my questions? What do I know? What don't I know? And try to identify who's going to be able to help me with these questions, and pursue them and ask them these questions and draw close to them. So this is also a thing that we know about Yosef, is that Yosef, he did this. He sought instruction from Yaakov. Which is not to say that Yaakov did not seek instruction from his father about how to deal with Esav, his brother. It isn't necessarily explicit that he did in the verses. in the Torah. But again, all the characters in the Torah are playing their roles, and they're doing what they need to do to teach us the lessons that we need to learn. In the ultimate reality, Esav's not actually evil. He's doing a certain job in the Torah to teach us certain lessons. But that's a thing that we can't understand. That's something that we can't even ask a question about. That's something that's in the endless light of the infinite. So it's a nice idea, and we should appreciate the Torah. And we should appreciate that we're learning things about these people. But still, the actions of Esav are, I mean, he's referred to as an evil person in the Torah and rabbinic writings. We do have to remember what the actual role in the story is. And we have to work our way up toward that. And one way to do that is to pursue the tzedakah emes, which is the thing that Yosef especially teaches us, is that Yosef sought out the instruction of Yaakov, because Yosef is the example to us. Yaakov is the pure concept. It's in Kabbalah, it's the foundation of reality, Yesod. And Yosef became a king, literally a physical king of Egypt. He ruled, he said nobody would lift a hand or a foot without his permission. So he relates to the quality of Malchus, which kingship, which means the physical world. So he's an example to us directly. If we want to be like Yaakov, we have to do it through Yosef. So two things he does is that he works with we're dealing with those around us, and those around us we do have to look into the good motives that they have and understand the reasons for things. And also that we must pursue the tzedakah emes. Who's the wisest person around, and how can they help me to do this, to see the intelligence situation?
So can I ask a question? Just
sure.
To put it into today's context. Are you saying that the atrocities of the 7th of October, that one shouldn't try to understand why it happened or how it happened, and just focus on good thoughts of the people around us?
That depends on who's the person that we're talking about here. How it happened and why it happened are extremely different level questions. If someone is in a position that they're actually having a physical effect, that's their role in life, whether they're in the military or they're someone who's assisting the military in some way, then yeah, not only they should understand how it happened, but they should be a complete master of every detail of how it happened. If someone is not in a position to, information that is not useful to a person in a practical way is immediately suspect. Maybe this information here is being placed by the Yetzer Hara to drive me crazy, to make me neurotic. Okay, so that's about how it happened. There are for sure people who have to know how it happened. They have to. And for all of us, I think in these days, there is some information that's relevant to us on a practical level. There's various different news sources that kind of give you filtered, like if you're a householder, here's what you need to know practically, and we're not going to share with you the stuff that's just like outside of your pay grade here. The idea of pay grade applies very much to a question about how it happened. A question of why it happened, perhaps you could say that there's sort of a pay grade thing too. But it's a little bit more of an on and off switch. How it happened, well, tzaddikim, okay, so let's say that Yaakov is the tzedakah emes. Yaakov, he has to understand Esav. And why? Because then he has to understand the why of Esav, because then he can understand the how of Esav. And Yaakov is actually at the level to handle Esav. So he's allowed to think about why. The truth is, maybe he doesn't need to contemplate why so much, but he's allowed to. Why is not a question that will drive him crazy, because he has the tools of how. We're Yosef in the situation. Of course, Yosef is a perfect tzaddik too. He's playing a job in the Torah to teach us certain lessons in the Torah. So, from Yosef, he doesn't really deal with Esav. A fundamental difference between Yaakov and Esav, Yaakov has to defeat Esav. Yosef does not have to defeat his brothers. What he has to do is find a way that everybody can be happy in the situation. And when his brothers come back to him later, they go through a series of going back and forth between their father, and he has to bring their father, and he has to find a way and give them a place they can be, that everybody's going to come to terms with the situation and be happy. He's in the position of teaching them. So why why by Esav doesn't really apply to him. So I think it's a big question of why applies to us.
So it's very nice that you compartmentalize Yaakov with Esav and Yosef with his brothers, but the truth of the matter is that Yaakov only went to confront Esav when Yosef was born. So there must be also a connection between Yosef and Esav.
Well, sure. And now he's got a kid. He's got to be more protective of the world. He's got to save the world.
Yosef.
Yeah. So Yosef is Yaakov. So he's it says right here, Ki hu haye ikar tod Esav. So when I say now he's got a kid, what I mean by that is Yosef. Now he's got the person that will actually continue his Yaakovness in the world. Remember, there's not before and after in the Torah. Not necessarily. So, besides, Yosef wound up getting the Bechorah too, in a way. He didn't have to, it's not because he did it, it was actually Yaakov that made that decision. But he also has this level of being the first, even though he wasn't born first. But I think that explains your question. Why did he challenge Esav when Yosef was born? Because Yosef is, well, that's his main child, so to speak.
So Bechor challenges Bechor, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, Bechor is an example of how he's Ikar Tod Esav, but it says explicitly he's Ikar Tod Esav. So he's his main child. Now, is that a worthy question? Doesn't that sound bad? He's got 12 kids, the guy, and he has a main kid. He's supposed to have favorites like that? So this is a guy that it's worthy of our time to contemplate. Well, what does it mean that he's the main child? And why would Yaakov make that decision? And we're actually getting into that conversation now about why Yaakov would make the decision of sort of favoring Yosef. One simple explanation could be that Yosef pursued the tzaddik emes. And the other brothers, it isn't said explicitly in the Torah that they, it's a midrash anyway, but midrash's Torah is Torah. It isn't said explicitly that the other brothers all came to Yaakov and they all wanted to learn specifically from him and that they had this. But by Yosef, it is said. So this is one reason that this is a message we want to spread to everybody, that yes, you should do your best to be a tzaddik and be wise and good and things like that. But also you should seek out instruction. And this is something that's epitomized by Yosef.
Thank you. Thank you so much.